but to have a personal connection to mental wellness and the reason why you're dancing and how to release that stress would be more beneficial. So a good dance teacher could be a dance therapist and working with the National Alliance of Mental Health Illness, NAMI, to bring marching arts and mental health together as a whole. This project is the first piece of the puzzle to really emphasize that.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Steps, produced by Apolla Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham, here with my amazing and wonderful co-host, Bree Zabrowski, with another fantastic episode with a first-time guest. So let's get into it and tell people what we've got today, Bree.
Jared Polite is the heart behind the NYC-based global collective Melanin Mosaic Performance Ensemble, serving as its founder and artistic director. His journey through marching arts began as a brass player and drum major, eventually leading him into the expressive world of color guard. Boy, is it ever, where his love for performance, musicals, and dance found a natural home. Since the mid 90s, Jared has been a passionate advocate for the power of art to heal, connect, and inspire. Through Melanin Mosaic, a collective of artists pushing creative boundaries through movement, film, and live performance, he creates bold and heartfelt work rooted in community and culture, blending personal storytelling, social commentary, and deep commitment to mental health awareness within the marching arts. He creates spaces for voices that deserve to be heard. We are so excited to have this conversation. We're definitely going to dive more into Melanin later in the conversation. But Jared, welcome and thank you so much for being here.
I can't tell you how much of an honor it is to be a part of this podcast today. So thank you both for having me. I found the podcast like 2 years ago, I guess. No, a year ago after you and I met. Well, you and I connected through the WGI and all that kind of stuff. So I was a fan. So I was like, wow, this is kind of cool to be, on the podcast now.
We're so excited, and it's been fun to reconnect with you and finally get things moving on the Apollo side. But as I just said, you are the director of Melanin Mosaic Performance Ensemble. We're going to dive into everything you all are doing later in the conversation. But to get us started today on this topic, particularly how mental health how we're using dance to heal mental health, and specifically today for this convo, men's mental health. Talk about what inspired you personally to use your platform to put a spotlight on mental health.
It didn't come naturally, I will say that. It was a journey. I've always said Melanin Mosaic was born in 1981, established in 2023, because it was just something that I grew up knowing that there was something else for me to do. Um, I didn't know what it was, but I had a lot of experience in music, art, dance, creative, film, advertising, graphic design, lots of creatives. I'm a Pisces. I'm super creative. I can't do one thing at a time. There we go, right? I just celebrated my birthday the 13th of March. So thank you. So I've always been very, very creative in all kinds of capacities. So when Melanin Mosaic finally came to be, it was part because I wanted to see a different way of excellence, Black excellence in the marching arts that wasn't being showcased. But it was also a matter of how many of my peers and friends missed marching and competing, but for 1,001 reasons, older, proximity to locations, all that kind of stuff, they can't march, can't compete, can't do what they love to do. And it became such a huge part of their existence, remembering the good old days, that I said, why do we have to spend our time in the good old days when those days are right happening now? They're just not competitive nature, but we can still use the same activity and the same art and same sport to elevate what we do as older adults with more experience now than when we were kids, to learn that there are ways to express ourselves through marching arts that doesn't have to be inside of a gymnasium to scores. And, when it came down to it, it was so many of my friends who were missing it, and it was mentally affecting them, and it still does to this day mentally affect them, that I know us being around is beneficial to them, to their identity, to their creation process. A lot of my friends who didn't know about Melon Mosaic and then found out were like, "I've been wanting to do something like this for so long. I have so many ideas that don't necessarily confine to a gymnasium." And I'm like, "Well, we are here to do it." I had friends who were on the verge of giving up the whole activity until they saw a post that said, "You can do this. Mental health is important." and they change their whole mindset. Like, you know what? I need to really reevaluate how I do this and what I'm doing with my career and my life as a marching artist. And your words and your identity are really striking a chord to say, you know what? There's more to me than what they see when I compete, and I should start showing that. So it's I can't be. There's no way that Melanin Mosaic, its way of mental health and awareness, could exist in the way it does without it being a pure reason to present, like, hey, this is a problem, these are some solutions, you're not alone in this, there are thousands and thousands and millions of people who have stopped marching and were left for dead, quite honestly, when it comes to what your life is for 9, 10, like, dancers, when you're dancing from age 5 to 23, and then you stop cold turkey because there's nothing else for you to do. You don't, like, what's your identity now when your whole life was a dancer?
I think it's like that for anything that you are completely immersed and committed to from childhood on, or just passionately for a long period of time and an intensity that it starts to feel like pieces of who you are as a person. And so when you are done with that, right? When so many of us have to step away and do other things, it just becomes, you just feel a little bit of a hole there and avoid. And I don't care what activity it is. When you have to alter the course of how much time you're doing something, or it's part of your life every day and then it's not. That's a process. And so I it's a great segue for the conversation today. And for those that didn't hear, we are talking about using dance and performing arts to heal men's mental health today. We're talking with Jarid Polite, director and founder of Melanin Mosaic Performance Ensemble. Melissa, let's get started because I know we've got a lot of ground to cover.
So we want to start with, men's mental health, which is a critical issue, and one specifically that of men of color is not touched upon at all. So why do you think it's so important to really focus on men's mental health? And do you think that the society is starting to take it seriously, that there is an issue there and a void there?
Men's mental health and men's mental situations where it becomes uncontrollable in a lot of ways. I think 3.9% or more men try to commit suicide or commit suicide than other people. Um, and that's a huge number when you're giving it so much credit to one side of the coin. That's just men. And then you break it down to men of color, and I'm sure that number goes crazy because of the baggage and the burden, the trauma that we deal with, that we don't deal with, but it's placed upon us through systemic reasons and et cetera, and how you were raised. Um, it's a problem, but I do believe that there are more voices now than before, given the platforms that are available. There are people out there who are on Instagram and social media, different platforms, YouTube, et cetera, creating avenues for learning and wellness and togetherness, even off of the socials. There are places and people who are connecting retreats, men retreats, circles, men's circles, things like that. So I think there are enough people, not say that, there are more people doing something now that we have the technology in our hands to connect to people we didn't have an opportunity to before. Before you had to hit the pavement and start handing out flyers. Just, like with anything else, you had to get a group of people together. There's only one way to do it, and that was handing out flyers and connecting to people. Now with social media in the palm of the people in your hand, you can do that a lot more readily, and I think it's really helping.
So we talked a little bit about what those pressures, you touched on what the pressures are that are affecting young men and adult men, men of color. But how do you think societal expectations affect men's mental health?
But I think we all have been trained to define a man, and that is where it all goes to put, because you're defining someone based on their gender, but not who they are as a person. And then you label them a man, and then you give everything that they have to be into a checklist. And there's like this. But not every person or man or woman or whoever is a checklist of anything. So to say a man has to be strong and not show emotions and be the breadwinner, now you're putting all these labels and restrictions on the man who maybe isn't the breadwinner because he takes care of the children. That's his role. He said, "Hey, I am the caring, nurturing father figure in this family. My wife or my partner is the breadwinner. I'm fine. We're fine with that." But we're stuck with these, misconceptions of what a man is, or what a woman is, or what a child is, or whatever it is. So it becomes, ingrained in our DNA to expect men to do this. And when men don't do this, now we're weak, we're soft, we're, effeminate, or we are of the LGBTQ plus area, which I happen to be a part of. But that doesn't define me as a man, it defines me as Jared. That's fine. That's enough for me to be like, hey, this is who I am, without that extra stigma being attached to me without me asking for it. So yeah, I think it's a problem. Some society has a problem with it, and I don't think we're stopping it anytime soon, unfortunately, because of the way that the world is now moving in 2025. Being a man is more important than, or presumingly being a man, or what a man is more important than anything nowadays. And I think it's going to take a lot of people to realize, hey, that's a label that you didn't ask for. So let's redefine what being a man is, what being you are, to the people out there, and you can tell your story better than they can tell you.
And we would be remiss to not acknowledge the intersectionality between the LGBTQIA plus community and men's mental health, and then these gender biases that people have, and gender conformist ideas, heteronormative culture that's out there that, like you said, defines men and puts even a more additional pressure on people who are male identifying, our trans community, our LGBTQIA community, people who are non-binary. Like, there's so many gender conformist ideas out there that place even more pressure on people. Specifically those who are male identifying. So I do definitely want to bring that up and affirm that, and know that there's even another layer, for our siblings out there who are experiencing that. So one of the things that, I've noticed, and I think is very often overlooked, is that men tend to use silence as the coping mechanism. Do you think, or what have you found in the past to be the most detrimental thing about using silence? Is there a time where silence is helpful that you have found in your experience? And what is the alternative to silence?
For me, I become very silent when I'm upset, but it's also because I'm thinking of every situation scenario. If I do say something, what will be the outcome of me saying something? And is saying something better than saying nothing? Or is it better to say something and say, "Hey, we gotta talk about this, get out the way, blah, blah, blah." I do it with my husband all the time. He knows when something's up, because I go radio silent. Horrible, horrible, but I understand. For me, my tongue is sharp, and I will say the wrong thing and blow it all the way out of proportion. So I hold it in, analyze it way too long, and then let it go by, which is horrible. Horrible way to handle it, but for me, it works because of the way my situation is. I know my situation is. Men in general keep things quiet because of the stigma of, you need to be handling this. And it becomes our own way of handling stress and trauma, because talking to marriage, right? Talk to me. And then we start talking, and then it becomes a whole thing of talking. And then what I want to say in 3 seconds now becomes a 30-minute conversation that I have to somehow fix, because I'm the problem. And men are 99.9% the problem in most situations.
Listen, we like to have t-shirt moments on this show where we're like, "Put that on a t-shirt. Could you just put that on a t-shirt? I will package it up, give it to my husband." And
But the backside should say, but don't believe the hype, because it's not always our fault, but we rather just take it on the chin, let it roll off, and move on, because we're trained to do that. As men, we can fix the problem, ain't complain, can't complain to nobody. Who you gonna complain to? You're a man. Who's gonna help you? You're a man. Get out there and work. Get out there and do this. Make sure it works out. I don't care about your situation. And that's where we as men are always put into a box of emotions and how we communicate. So when we start communicating, then it becomes, oh, now you're, like you said, you're soft and you're weak, et cetera, et cetera. And instead of saying thank you for communicating your feelings, it's punk. Like, like what? Like, why would you do that to that person? So, silence is sometimes golden, like they say. And I think there are just times where silence is required and needed. But as men, we don't speak out enough when we actually are hurting and need help. And that's where things go wrong. That's what the problem.
You're in a unique position to speak to this topic because you encourage, movement as a way to cope with mental health, and you deal with this every day in what you do. So, but you're by no means a professional, right? Like you've said that. Like I'm not an expert. I'm learning too, right? But like you are experiencing this and kind of leading this movement. So let's touch on coping mechanisms a little bit. What does an unhealthy coping mechanism look like, from what you've seen? Because it sounds like you've seen quite a bit.
I will honestly say the number one unhealthy coping mechanism that anyone can do is throw it on social media. Your problems on social media are a lightning rod for people who also are dealing with mental health situations that don't care about yours. They don't care that you're dealing with something because they're dealing with something too. And if they're not dealing with something, then they say, "Well, your life looks perfect. Why are you always doing this? You're out shopping all the time and showing off your life." But that's the stuff that I show you because I want to present a facade of happiness. But when I come to you and on social media and say, "Hey, I'm hurting," and all I get is, "But your life looks fine on paper," or "Everything looks good. Why you talk about it now?" Like, or "This is the place for it." If I can't reach out to my friends and family on Facebook or social media, who can I reach out to? So that's another mechanism of shutting you down. So now you recluse from your everybody, recluse, and you're like, okay, now I'm in my own room by myself, can't talk to anybody on social media about this situation because I get thousands of hate comments. Instead of saying we support you, here's some information, some resources to help, we put into, oh, you're just showing off, blah 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 blah. And that's, so I think that's the number one that I've noticed from people in places and being around, the number one place thing not to do.
It's been unbelievable to me to watch. I don't want to get into it or anything, but the political and religious, like the bravery we all of a sudden have, like the common sense rule of like, don't discuss these things in mixed company has like completely gone out the window. And people are like the way that people go at each other, it's not just stating your opinion, it's the amount of time and energy it's taking to go back and forth in such a negative manner. Like, do we really think we're going to change anyone's mind about anything? Like, use it to create your memories to look back on and go, oh, remember when I posted this picture and 10 years ago? Oh, that's so cool. But like, why are we turning into these like brave keyboard warriors that would never say or do these things if I was standing face to face with you? Like that basic decency and humanity has just like gone out the window. It's so insane to me. So far. And it's like I'm looking at it going, where in the world are we at right now? Like this is so great. Like we have just forgotten all the basic common sense rules of life.
Communication and being in fellowship with one another is a huge part of mental health and wellness, and we are void of it 99% of the time. I can say to myself, if my husband wasn't home and I didn't have a dog, I would say I would see no one for days at a time because I work from home. I walk the dog and that's about it. But if I had nothing else, it'd be like, well, my community is gone unless it's on social media. So I, text and call and people, like, even like through the pandemic, it was such a hard time for people to connect, and mental health went straight down the toilet because of that. Also, I'm an introvert, so I can do weeks without people, but at some point you gotta come out of that hole and say, "Hey, where's everybody at?" And, to just find a community outside of the social media. And
Yeah, and just like be careful that that doesn't become your entire community and your entire validation because it can be positive or negative, and it's not authentic because it's not 100% real. It's a sliver, like you said earlier, of what people want the world to see of their life, right? And so you have to be really careful that you're not getting so caught up in that validation that you're getting from this thing that's not 100% authentic. Um, which I've seen people go really wrong with that. Um, sure. And you're like, "Oh, what?" Yeah, yeah. 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 So on the flip side, what does it look like to effectively manage emotions from your perspective, and how can dance become a powerful tool and a vehicle for that?
I honestly like to say that I've been practicing what I preach, but I've been in such a mindset of creation, management, that I find myself the best times, which is weird. I would have never said this 5 years ago, but walking my dog, getting out around 2 o'clock almost every day and just taking a 20, 30-minute walk with the dog, headphones on, music on, just not worrying about what's on the computer, who I got to contact, what's happening next. Just knowing that I have to watch this dog, make sure it goes to the bathroom, make sure I clean it up, make sure it doesn't attack anybody else or harm anybody else. No one's around to harm me or the dog. And the 20-minute walk, I stand outside. I like to stand outside for a second. I just watch the world go by. Just the small things makes a huge difference in your attitude and your mental well-being if you just have that moment of, "I don't have to worry." If which is rare for a lot of people. I totally understand. There's so many other things that I could worry about 24/7, but walking the dog is the one time that I sort of stop and shut off, put on some house music just by walking and jamming, doom, 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 and the dog's doing this dog thing, and I see people. I feel the air in my face and the sun, and that half an hour, I'm good. Yeah. So it's a small thing, and then, when I do have an opportunity to choreograph or write, I love spending that hour in the studio. Just me and the music. My focus is on creation. How can I make something better? How can I change something? How can I, figure something out? Or I'm just out for myself, just having an old time, like freestyling for an hour in the gymnasium in the gym studio with my flag and my music, and I'm rocking out and see what happens. So it's the small things.
This is going a little off topic, but I'm curious, in my experience, there's a lot of men in my life that I think would typically be more resistant to traditional means of therapy. Yeah, I know therapy in general, there's just it's not as taboo as it used to be, right? Like it's very normal, and I feel like so many people embrace that in their day to day life to keep themselves mentally healthy and strong. But I still know so many people that are so resistant to that concept. Do you feel like dance is and movement is kind of a great alternative for those people?
I think it is, but I think anything that people enjoy doing is as well. If golf is your thing, then play a few more rounds of golf. If basketball is your thing, then play basketball. For me, I love performing. I love dance, so it's always been my release. Even when I was competitive, knowing that I was out there on the floor in the field and doing my thing, people watching me and enjoying it, let me understand. Had a relationship with the audience that was different than me just being in my room doing it, which was great. But I love just dancing in my room as well. Like I said, house music, and I'm going for a little town and like boom, 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 walk down the street. I bop and walk and sing all the time. I bop down the street all the time. Yes, I'm always bopping. It's weird because I know people watching me sometimes, and I sometimes don't care, but sometimes I'm like, okay, I gotta get this I gotta get it in real quick. Okay, I'm good. Now I'm up to walking. But yeah, I think any release that men or women or anybody who it's dealing with something can do to release that stress. But I also believe that guided mental wellness trips and tours and professionals and groups also help. I know I've always thought that dance therapy was a thing and art therapy was a thing. But now that I know that there are professionals out there who train in that and have degrees in that, it helps me to know that, oh, this really is a thing. So I believe dancing is great, but to have a personal connection to mental wellness and the reason why you're dancing and how to release that stress would be more beneficial. So a good dance teacher could be a dance therapist if they're giving you the strength and the freedom to say, you know what, leave it at the door, just breathe in the good, breathe out the bad, those kind of things. And, let's think about what we're trying to accomplish in our lives and how that can be achieved through motion and let that feeling get into your body and, express that through your fingertips and how that stress can just release so things like that is much better than just saying go to the club because then you start that's a whole nother, level of mental stress. So yeah, I saw just dancing is great, but having that person to help you guide you through that process is probably even through dance will be beneficial.
So, Jared, you've said your team is devoted to bringing the stories of the African diaspora and BIPOC communities to life through bold and captivating marching and performing artistry, which is a great mission statement, by the way. Super encompassing. I love it. What advice would you give to someone that may be listening on how, like, this idea of storytelling helps with men struggling in their mental health?
There's times in my life where watching this is a plug for life. Alvin Ailey Dance Company perform Revelations. And watching some of the pieces that feature men prominently, like I Want to Be Ready, one of their parts Revelations, and the way that they were able to let go of that emotion in performance gets me every time. Every time. Sinner Man, those things. It's like, okay, I I've always had a relationship to that movement and that person in my life. That's why I've always considered Melanin Mosaic to be the Alvin Ailey of the marching arts. That's my goal, and I'll be all stop. That's where I want to be, to have that kind of impact on not just men but people across the world, to see that what we do has touched people in different ways and for generations a legacy. That's my always going to be my ultimate my thing. But there really has always been like the love of just dance and movement. So telling stories that affect our culture in a space that doesn't always allow that to happen because of lack of understanding, lack of training, lack of awareness. The marching arts are predominantly white situation, unless you go to HBCU, and that's a whole different monster, right? HBCU is very ethnic and culture, but they don't tell the stories in the way that we tell the stories. So we're in that middle ground of we're doing a very artistic form of culture telling, but doing it our own special way. And I think that it's very important to have those avenues and to create those places and spaces for people like that, um, BIPOC community as well, African diaspora as well, men, women, children, etc., to really showcase that you don't have to do everything the same way as everybody else, and you have room and a freedom, currently the freedom, 2025, early 2025, to express yourself. So why hold back?
So, in that vein, can you tell us a little bit about the show that you're producing now and how Melanin Mosaic Performance Ensemble is using movement currently to address mental health issues within the community?
About 10 years ago, I had an idea for a show that featured um, a group of men. Go back a little bit further. One of my favorite musicals of all time is Rent. Rent was the first show that really informed my upbringing as a queer man before I realized what the TVs and videos were saying wasn't the end all be all of being, of the community. So seeing that show, and especially during the AIDS epidemic process, living in New York City, it was a lot to experience at one time through a production on stage, and I fell in love. But I've always thought that those sessions with the people in the groups, going through my own situations, would look really great on film or on stage, but done in a way that tells the color guard side of the story, how we show our own special skills and ways of creating. Fast forward 10 years, it took on a whole new life when I again started realizing that there are a lot of people in this marching arts activity who are struggling mentally to deal with whatever disconnection or whatever's happening in their lives, whether they're still connected to the marching arts. And there needed to be a voice that was loud enough that'll be heard from here to generations from now. And working with the National Alliance of Mental Health Illness, NAMI, to bring marching arts and mental health together as a whole, this project is the first piece of the puzzle to really emphasize that we as a marching arts community need avenues of mental health.
This isn't really something that's been done before. Like, this isn't something that's been done or addressed. And admittedly, like, our world has just opened up, since being introduced to marching arts. Like, that was not part of, our history on the Apolla side of things and our childhood. And so we really just started learning about this community really and entrenching ourselves in it a few years ago. And it's amazing what goes on, and the level of production and the level of artistry and just the work ethic and the commitment and the time put into this, and just the wear and tear on the bodies that we just didn't realize. Like, there's so many things that when you peel back the layers, it's like an onion. There's so much there to dive into. So I love that you guys are doing this.
Yeah, and honestly is long overdue because you're talking about many, 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 many generations of trauma being built up and lumped on to the younger, newer generation. I can honestly tell you, I had instructors when I was 15 years old, 16 years old, who were 60 at that point, smoking cigars, throwing chairs at us, calling us all kinds of names. But it was it was the time in which they lived through the marching arts and how it was done when people didn't care about your mental health and wellness or how you felt. The job is the job. Get the job done no matter what the cost. We have to compete and be the best we can be. If I have to throw a chair at you, or a drumstick at you, or clog your horns, you don't play, I'm gonna do it. Now, fast forward, people are going to jail for stuff like that. Organizations are shutting down. You cannot play those games anymore. But we have so many generations still of people who maybe not be who aren't teaching anymore. But on social media, you see, oh, that group deserves this one. I didn't like this group performance. Oh, I'm like, these kids are what? The kids who are performing these shows are reading these comments. What are we doing?
It's almost like it's that really dangerous badge of honor mentality that the older generations have of, like, I did it this way and it gave me grit, and so you need to do it this way. So you have the grit, not realizing there's like a whole nother healthier way to get there, you know, than to do it that way. And so I think it's a really common problem, more than I would like to admit, across performing arts industries in general, and markets and segments.
Exactly. And so the instructors, we're trying to reach them first to say, how is your mental health? Because we ignore the fact that everyone in this activity, you've seen the rooms, are dealing with something. From the person who is coming into the open the gym that day, to the sound person, to the person who is cooking your food, person who is vendoring those buttons, person who is judging that show, person who is performing that show, people who taught that show, they're all at the same exact time dealing with mental stress. And at no point is anyone saying, "Hey, we should all just take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Let's enjoy this show and let all that lie. And what happens, congratulations, have a good show." But no one's dealing with any of that. It's why didn't this person do that? And why the judge just did the score and blah, 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 blah. And why my food cold? And why I got to wait online for the bathroom? And it's like a lot. And why can't I go into parking lot? Like, this person is voluntarily doing left and right. Like, they are not in charge of any of this stuff. But yet you're bringing all your stuff to them when they don't need it. Those are the mental stresses that we continue to push around and push aside, instead of saying, hey, let's focus on our community. So we're going to start with the instructors first, to let them know there's help for you if you need it, to then hopefully trickle down to the members, but then hopefully trickle out to the rest of the community. And this film is hopefully the first part of that journey for all of us.
Yeah, I am excited to see, and I also want to something came to my head when we were talking about grit, and there's a fine line between grit and trauma. And and I think a lot of what we developed and we thought to be grit was just a lot of trauma. So we have to really make sure that we figure out, sort it out. What's grit, what's resilience, and what's just a traumatic incident that we have stuffed down and learned and normalized. So definitely want to lift that up. Jared, you are a first time guest. So we need to explain homework. We give homework on this show, not to you, but to our viewers. You get to give the homework this time. Each week, we ask our guests to give our viewers one action that they can take between now and our next show, which is next Friday, to make progress in this area.
Take inventory of your own mental health. Something that small can start your whole triggering of, oh, maybe I should do this, that. And I would say, one of the websites that we use a lot is the NAMI.org is a great resource to determine maybe there's a test on there or something like that that can help you and shape your thought pattern about mental health and wellness. And I wouldn't even say worry about people outside your organization or outside your group, but don't think that they're not dealing with something as well. So when you say, "How is your day? How are you doing?" and they answer fine really quick, 9 times out of 10, they're not fine. They're not fine. They're not fine. So just know when you say, "How are you day?" "I'm fine." People understand that you're not fine, or they say, "Okay, well, you're dealing with it. You'll be okay." And sometimes just by saying, "Hey, actually, let me take a beat, think about it. You know what? Yeah, I'm okay, but I'm not the best." And sometimes you might get that might be enough just to say, just to tell the words because someone might not be capable or to handle what's coming next, which is fine. But at least they know, okay, maybe I'll check in a couple of days, or maybe yeah, I'll do something that might. Let's go to a movie. How about, yeah, you want to go movie tonight? So even those kind of small things, if they know that you're not dealing with something well, could be a benefit to you just by getting out of the house, doing something else, being community of people, fellowship. But really take that time to invest in yourself to say, "Am I okay?" When you say, "How are you doing?" So that's the first thing I would say. Do that's your homework. Really assess how you're doing before you say, "I'm fine."
We give homework, the same homework every single week is to take the STEPS initiative, which is the impetus for Beyond the Steps. It's a set of free, yes, free modules on everything from nutrition to psychology to medicine and science to gender equity to racism, sex abuse and prevention, you name it. There is free information there that is very, very useful. Bree has popped that link onto the screen. Please go take a look at that and use it however you need to learn more and be better moving forward. Jared, this has been an amazing episode. How can people get involved and learn more about supporting your mission with Melanin Mosaic?
You can first, thank you so much for having us. You can follow Melanin Mosaic um, through our website, www.melanin, Melain Mosaic, MOSIACPE for Performance Ensemble. So melaninmosaicpe.com. And we are located at Melanin Mosaic PE on every platform, social media, you name it, except for the bird one. We're there at Melanin Mosaic PE.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. For all of you watching, I'm Bree Zabrowski here with Melissa McDaniel Grisham. Thank you to Jarid Polite from Melanin Mosaic Performance Ensemble for the great conversation today. Make sure to check out what they're doing, give them a follow, all the things. Check out their website. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Steps. You can find this episode and all of our episodes available on YouTube and Facebook at Apolla Performance and TP Dance Creations. So be sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, all the things. We'll be back next week chatting with Kinsasha Garrett with a conversation about inclusion in cheerleading and dance spaces. Until then, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps. Everybody have a wonderful weekend.